There we go. And I will start by handing you over to Andrea Harvey from Places for Nature, who'll tell you all about her exciting community interest group. So over to you, Andrea.
Thank you. Right, I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully it'll all work. Okay. Right, can everybody see that? Can you all see the screen?
Yep.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Well, hi everyone. It's really great to be invited along to this webinar series. I love sort of the opportunity to chat about what I do with Places for Nature, and hopefully, you know, kind of help people feel enthused about helping communities to improve opportunities for wildlife and for nature, particularly across Devon, of course. So just we've got about 10 minutes or so. So I'm just going to cover a few topics about Places for Nature, which is the organisation that I set up. So a little bit about us, why we got started, what we do, but then also thinking if you're in the realm of thinking, right, okay, I want to get a community group started, just some things that I found helpful when we were getting going as an organisation, and where you might be able to look for funding and support and potentially some opportunities. So Places for Nature, I set that up with my co-director Emma, who's at the bottom left there. Started thinking about setting it up really before COVID hit. So it was the winter of 2019, and I was just moved into like a new build house, and it was kind of a surprise moving to a house where the garden just had a bit of turf thrown in it. There was no real signs of wildlife, and it was actually quite depressing really, and I sort of made it my mission to try and turn it into a bit of a wildlife friendly space. So I've been in this property now for about 4.5 years, and the back garden's a bit of a zoo, to be honest. But one of the things I did do was start talking to my neighbours about, you know, some of the different things that I was trying in terms of planting schemes, what kind of food I was putting out for the birds and things like that. And my neighbours were really surprised because they weren't really having very much success. And because lots of us had obviously bought, you know, new builds as well, it's all in the same community, it's quite expensive as well. So some of the things that I was trying out was just doing different things that didn't cost very much money. And I thought, well, if my local neighbourhood are kind of experiencing these sorts of problems, then we can't really be that unique. And that kind of really kick-started my idea for starting Places for Nature. So we're a community interest company, a KIC or a CIC as they're sometimes called, which is a type of social enterprise, and ours is set up in a way that's basically entirely not for profit. And there are different ways that you can run a social enterprise, but this particular one, all of our profits go back into helping communities. And it really was driven just by my own personal experience of wanting to do something to help nature, but also to support the local community. Because, you know, like I say, it's a tricky one, because sometimes you don't always know where to start or how to get started. And when you start looking on the internet or in books, it's all a bit overwhelming. So I just wanted to pull things together just to help out, not just my community, but others. So our mission and vision really at Places for Nature is to help communities to connect with nature, but also with each other. But really so that the health and well-being benefits can be bestowed within communities coming together, really working together for the common good. So what we actually do at Places for Nature is provide support to communities in need. So the idea is that they can approach us and ask for help and support depending on what funding that we've got available, so that we can offer that. So for example, we offer equipment, it could be supplies like bird food, for example, or bird feeders. And going forward, it will be things like workshops and webinars. And the idea generally is that, like I say, it's for communities in need. We're entirely focused on the Southwest. The services that we provide and the equipment that we offer, at the moment, it's currently funded by getting grant support. But going forward, what we'll be doing is working with businesses and helping them to bring some nature into their operations. And then hopefully for the profits that we make from working with them, that will then help us fund the work that we do with communities. And the idea really, again, is that, you know, the equipment that we provide, we try and source it locally, refurbish wherever possible, but work with local businesses, other local non-profits, but generally just support the communities as well as organisations that we potentially can collaborate with. What I should say that we don't actually do is we don't do the work for communities. So I kind of feel that that's quite important, because if we kind of came in and said, right, you need to plant this here, or, you know, you need to dig that there, or we'll just take it over, I think then communities might perhaps lose that connection with what they're trying to do. So we try and take kind of like a step back from that, but provide them with the support and hopefully the motivation, the experience and the knowledge to help them actually get forward and get going with their projects. So thinking about, you know, if you're in a situation that I was in about two years ago or so, some of the things that I thought about when I wanted to get this going was really what the problem was and what it is you want to do about it and why you want to do it. So really what you're doing is forming a story, so that when you talk about why you want to work on a particular project or a particular scheme, it engages people, it helps get your community on board, it helps supporters or funders see what it is and why you want to do it. But it can also be quite overwhelming. So for me, I found it was important not to put too much pressure on myself and start small, because, you know, you kind of feel like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders. So if you've got a team of people around you, whether it's volunteers, your neighbours or friends or family members, see if they can help you out, share roles, you know, responsibilities, that kind of thing. One of the other things that I wanted to do before I started Places for Nature was start up a little nature group for the community where I live. So one of the things we did to get that going was to set up a Facebook account. And, you know, for that, we've had quite a few people want to join. So we share like admin responsibilities for that. And so, you know, you've always got somebody that can admit people that want to join or screen post, that kind of thing. And if you're at that point where you're thinking about starting up a group or an organisation, think about your structure. Do you want something that's informal? So like, you know, with my little local nature group, is that something that you want to do? Or do you want something more formal, like, you know, something where you'd need a constitution or some kind of legal structure? You need to think about funding. So, you know, do you need to buy things in? If so, how are you going to get that money together to do that? Do you need support? If there's a particular piece of land that you want to work with, do you need permissions and licenses to do that? Insurance, safeguarding issues, health and safety, there's a whole multitude of things that you need to consider. And also, how are you going to engage your community and raise awareness? Like I say, Facebook's really great for that kind of thing. But, you know, are you going to need things like a website? Are you going to put notices on a notice board, which is what I've done for events before? How are you going to get the word out there? But it's also worth finding out what other groups are doing, because they're quite often really happy to share their experiences and might have some ideas that might help. And for me, for Places for Nature, collaborating is a really important thing for us. So, you know, when I was saying about, you know, we want to try and source equipment and resources from local organisations, that's really important, because not only does it help us provide the services that we offer, but also it helps support them. So for example, if we get some grant funding, if we buy equipment or say like a hedgehog house from somebody, it supports their endeavours too. And always use local knowledge and connections, because, you know, I've certainly in Devon, lots of people know each other, or somebody will know somebody really important or who has a good idea. So, you know, use those connections to your advantage. Meet up with people that, you know, that have that expertise if you can. So I wanted to talk a little bit about funding, because that's one of the things that might come up for you guys if you're starting out. So, I mean, obviously there's lots of ways that you can bring in funding through donations, crowdfunding, investments, trading, that kind of thing. But I would say probably, well, I guess a lot of you wouldn't want to do that. So you might be looking at, say, for example, grants, particularly if you're quite a small organisation or a small group that wants to get going. So I thought that was an easiest one to start with, because I tend to get ask that question a bit from other organisations. And you can look at local funding. For example, some of the local councillors will offer little grants or small pockets of money to support local projects. We've probably all seen like the little tokens that you get in supermarkets that you can actually use to basically fund small projects. There are also regionally focused charities that look at these sorts of things that want to help support you. So for example, the Norman Family Charitable Trust, they operate in Exeter and East Devon, and they support local community organisations. Nationwide, obviously they're the big funders like the National Lottery, but then you see like businesses like Warburton's have schemes as well, and they will fund small projects. But there are also grant finding services, because sometimes it can be difficult to find where you can get all the different grants from. So Devon County Council very handily have a funding newsletter that they send out, so you can register and they'll send you alerts out. But there's also something called My Funding Central, and that's where you can find out what grants are going on that might be applicable to you across the Southwest. And also they send out a weekly alert. Just a few things to think about with grants. In many cases, you might need to have a constitution or a more formal structure in place. You might also be asked for sets of accounts, which you might not have. So obviously it's a case of narrowing down which grants might be right for you. Sometimes, well, most often actually you'll need a group bank account or the use of an account of another organisation, and that can be tricky to find someone that's willing to do that. You might need certain policies and procedures in place. So it could be things like health and safety, safeguarding, those sorts of things, particularly if you're working with vulnerable groups. And also you need to be aware of timescales, restrictions on what funds can be spent on and what they can't be spent on. And sometimes you have to report back on things like impact and you know, the number of people that you get to work with. I'm running a little bit over, so I'm going to speed this up a little bit now. But besides funding, there are also lots of opportunities for support. So don't forget to engage with your local community. So talk to your neighbours, put up notices on notice boards, Facebook posts, that kind of thing. Speak to local businesses or businesses operating in your area. So it could be, you know, a local supermarket. It could be that they have members of staff that can volunteer to help out with your project. Talk to local councillors, email MPs, because they might have some useful connections and may be able to get the word out for you. Social media is an absolute gift for getting community projects started. So, you know, because things can be shared, and then, you know, before you know it, you get lots of people hopefully volunteering and offering their support and services. In Exeter, we're very lucky that we've got community builders that have this brilliant network of people that are helping out and just bringing people together. There are umbrella organisations like DCT, which is Devon Communities Together, that provide help and support for community groups. The NCVO, which is the National Council for Volunteer Organisations, they have a series of templates for policies, for examples. You've got Devon Wildlife Trust that like to support community groups. You can get trees, for example, from the Queen's Green Canopy Scheme at the moment. There's local seed banks. I mean, the list is endless, really. And then there's us, because at the moment, one of the things that we're doing is we've got some grant funding so that we can start offering a tool donation pilot. So this will be something that can be applied for online. So community groups in Exeter and East Devon can come to us and ask for some refurbished tools or some seeds. I can't remember what we've currently got on the list of things, but that project will be starting very soon. And that's a pilot just to test how well the system works with applying online for support. And that will then be followed up by the community grant that we've got through the National Lottery. And that's where we'll actually be doing some outreach work with communities and going out and helping by providing workshops and all sorts of things. So that will be coming up in hopefully like the next month or two. So keep an eye on our social media pages for updates on that. And if you want to get in touch with me, there's my email address there. We've got the website and also our social media if you'd like to get in contact with us that way.
Brilliant.
That's about it. Sorry, I ran over a bit there.
No, it's fine. Absolutely perfect. Perfect. Yeah, no, that was really, really good. Thanks, Andrea. I think that's the thing with setting up a community group. There are lots of things to consider, and that can put people off. But the information is out there. If you've got the determination and will, it can be done. And I think a lot of it does, as you say, come down to just talking to people and making those connections, doesn't it? But really important stuff, and that's something we want to build into that part of the local nature partnership website, is give people that advice. So I'll be chatting with you again to get your thoughts and ideas and how we can improve that. So that was brilliant. Thank you so much. Okay, so as I said in the chat, if anyone's got any questions, then do please save them to the end of the session. We'll have all the questions at the end. That's the easiest way to do it. But next up, we've got Simon and Andrew from Green Futures Newton Abbot. But before they chat to you, I'm going to share their video. This is their promotional video, all about what they've been up to and what Green Futures is about. So if I try and do this, fingers crossed it will work. So let's just see. Now, can everyone see that? Is that up okay? Yeah, all good. Okay, now just let me know if the noise, if the sound is working or not. Hopefully it will be working. So.
No sound.
No sound?
No.
Damn it.
Well,
I
can try and mime to it.
Let's see what the problem is there.
Mike, if it's not going to play, then
it's not going to do the job.
We'll just do the presentation. We can. Yeah.
I just wonder if I'm sure there's a little bit that says share sound, but it doesn't seem to be obvious. Okay. Well, what would be good is if we can link to this off the website. So if anyone wants to watch this video at a later date, we can share that around, and that would be great. But if I can't get the sound to work, I can't get the sound to work. So that's a real shame. Sorry about that, guys.
You might just need to unshare and then try and share again, looking for that little box to tick.
Let's have another go, shall we? Let's have one more go. Okay. Share sound. Right. This should be it then. Here we go. Right. Let me know if this works.
Hi, my name's Drew Rothery.
All good.
I started the Green Futures project in Newton Abbot last May 2020. I'm here to present a short film introducing some of the amazing people who are now working with us to achieve our aims. And essentially, Green Futures is about a response to the challenge of climate change and loss of biodiversity in our local area and across the whole world, really. But from the place of providing opportunities for people within the green economy. So we want to give people skills, get people outdoors, working in the local environment, and onto a pathway that will hopefully lead to employment with local businesses in our local area. We've made a good start, but with support of Unlimited, we can really get rolling, and this can be a really fantastic piece of work. I'm now going to hand you over to my fellow coordinator, Simon Heath, and he's going to tell you a bit more about his involvement. Thank you.
I think the key thing about the work that we're doing with Green Futures is about connecting and reconnecting people back to the environment and the ecosystems in which we live. It feels so important that in the work that I do with my clients, with my ecotherapy walk and talk work, that so much of it is about each client going on their own individual path and exploring what's going on for them internally, whilst at the same time being part of something that is much, much bigger, and connecting to different elements around us. This is the second video we did. The first one was outside and it was too windy, but that is where I feel at home, and I know that the people that I work with really get something from being outside. And I think if we can find placements for people that encourage them to reconnect to the earth, to the soil, to the landscape, and have a really meaningful connection through their work, then that's got to be beneficial, not just for them, but for society, for our community, and for the environment.
We've obviously seen a huge increase in visitor audiences to the outdoors over the last 18 months due to COVID and lockdowns, and it's very likely that will continue, because lots of people have found what's on their doorstep and suddenly thought, wow, this is such a fantastic place, we've got to make more use of it, we've got to come here more often. And I think, just to take Bradley as a case in point, we've got some people counters there, and over this last year we've seen pretty much a 50% increase in visit numbers. So we've gone up to around about 200,000 visits a year, just coming in to walk dogs, use the open spaces, enjoy nature, and sort of basically get out of your own house and do things.
Well, I like to grow things. I think it's beneficial. You pop in a seed into some soil, and if you're lucky, you get a plant, and it's very rewarding. And if it's vegetable, you've got something to eat at the end of it. I love being in this space. You've got nature around, and you could be peaceful and quiet and listen to it, or you can have a chat with people, because for me in particular, I live alone, and it's nice to interact with others sometimes if I get fed up with my own company. I'm a creative person, so I've been able to bring that to here and do whatever I like within the rules of the Allotment Association. I've created a pond fairly recently.
There it is.
And with lockdown, I think I've struggled quite a lot, but I've been able to come down here. Luckily, we weren't refused entry as long as we kept our distance from one another. And it's been a saving grace.
As a Tingbridge District Councillor, I was more than happy to sponsor Green Futures. I gave you some of my community fund, £300 I believe, which is hopefully you've now got it.
We have, thank you.
Because I think whatever we can do to support groups like yourself, who are willing to assist the town and district council in helping with our environment, helping with people who are less fortunate than ourselves, helping with the disabled, etc. It's got to be a good thing. And there is several jobs, which is why the town council has got involved with yourself. There is several little jobs that we could do if money was available, which we know you can do with a little help from us in perhaps supplying materials, etc. And also it will also give our local residents a way into helping us to actually support our environment, which has got to be a good thing.
Fantastic.
Okay, brilliant.
Okay,
guys, that was great introduction to Green Futures. So if you want to give us a little bit more, over to you.
thanks, Mike. So that was a year ago, and we've achieved quite a lot since then. So I'll just quickly run through those, and then I'm going to hand over to Simon, who's going to talk about more about the nuts and bolts of working with people around ecotherapy. I think, one thing I'd like to say is one thing that we've discovered, which kind of echoes what Andrea was saying, is, it's not the easiest thing to develop a group. and we all know, everyone who's here, I imagine, understands the nature of the environmental challenges that we all face. And so, yeah, we're trying to do something in Newton Abbot, but there's a lot more that we all need to do. So, yeah, it's great to have, an event like this. So just briefly, we're now working with the National Trust on the Bradley estate in Newton Abbot to improve biodiversity. We're working with Newton Abbot Town Council. We've done some practical improvement projects, trying to use local materials, wood sourced from Dartmoor, trying to cut down on concrete and cement, things that produce carbon, etc. And we've actually just, by the way, we got the grant from Unlimited, which is what that film was about, which was, really significant for us. And we've just been awarded another grant from the Devon Environment Foundation for a pollinator restoration project. And essentially that, I think we're discovering, how to manifest our goals in the community. And, we're very ambitious. We haven't created any jobs yet, but we are creating local improvements in the environment, and the pollinator project, if anyone wants to sort of keep an eye on our website, then we'll be giving you updates about that. That's going to be happening over the next couple of years. So we'll be monitoring, getting proper baselines. We're working with the Devon Biodiversity Record Centre, so professional ecologists, and then engaging with our local community. One of the key things, though, for us, it's not just what we're doing, it's how we are relating with each other, and also how we're feeling about some of these challenges, and how we stay motivated. And that's, I'll hand over to Simon now, who can talk a bit more about that side of things. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. There's a couple of things I just really wanted to pick up on, really. Andrew, in your talk before ours, I was really hit by the health and well-being element that you had within that, and I think for us that's something that is a real driver, and I think quite often it's something that gets overlooked. I feel that there's a big focus on doing things for the environment, but without actually recognising the benefits, the health benefits it has for us as individuals and for the community at large. Within the film that you've just seen, I talk about ecotherapy, and I just very quickly wanted to just introduce the idea of what that is within this remit. So ecotherapy is quite a large umbrella term that describes a whole range of activities that are involved with being immersed in nature whilst working in a therapeutic way, be that sort of counselling or sort of wild walking on your own or within a group, sort of any nature-based activity. And the work that I'm involved in as a counsellor and an ecotherapist is really to do with walk and talk therapy. So I at the moment I work with clients in a number of different locations, spending an hour to an hour and a half with them in a counselling way of being, but outside. And the benefits that they get from that are absolutely immense. And it's for me as well. And I think one of the things I'd like to share, and Andrew mentioned this at the beginning, so for us it's very much about the emotional side of things. I last night I had about 3 hours sleep. I just couldn't sleep. Woke up this morning feeling pretty pretty low, to be honest, and a bit sort of, oh, just can't be bothered with the day. And I went outside and I spent an hour walking before I had a client. And in that time, I just could feel myself becoming more grounded, more connected. And so just from a personal point of view, I know that for me, there's a safe space in nature. It allowed me to connect in a number of different ways. And then when I'm working with clients, I sit on a regular basis, people getting some form of energy from walking and being in a space where they're surrounded by, not just by nature, but by other people in nature as well, and being part of an ecosystem that we're all connected to. And so that plays a big part of our work. And what I'd like to do now is share with you a graphic really that we've worked on, that I think probably explains very much how we see green futures and the sort of different areas that intersect. So we start off with the environment, and then from that we've got sorry, I'm struggling with the screen share. It's not allowing me to move on to the next. There we go. So environment, we've all then got what I've just been talking about, the personal well-being area that feels really important to us with the work that we do. And within that area of the connection between personal well-being and the environment, there is a sense of healing. Andrew also mentioned about the fact that we want to help people retrain and get back into work. So there's a real sense of livelihood about going back to that connection of actually earning a living from the land. And if you get all of those together, the livelihood and well-being gives a deep sense of fulfillment, and having being able to work on the land. Those three things are all supported by the green economy, and that is where we really want to be able to take people. So the way that we do that will be and is a mixture of working with individuals on the land, working with them in a therapeutic way, so doing some walk and talk therapy, or even just when we're working with them, talking. It's fascinating working with some of our volunteers, how once you start sort of shifting undergrowth or putting in gate posts and things like that, just how people start to open up and talk. And I find that we get that so much more than if we were sort of sat face to face in a room, just kind of saying, so what's going on for you at the moment? So all of these things hopefully tie together. And as Andrew said, we're working on a number of different projects, some of which are more environmental, some of which are more to do with personal well-being, some of which are to do with jobs, but they all connect. And for us, I think that's what feels important. I'm aware that we're sort of fairly tight for time, and I know that we're going to get a chance to answer any questions afterwards. So I think we'll leave that there if that's okay.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
it's good. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. No, that's fascinating, and you're absolutely right that, you know, like we've got a serious ecological emergency on our hands, climate emergency, and we need to repair our ecosystems. But it isn't just for the sake of those ecosystems and that wildlife. It has huge benefits for us as well. And there's just shed loads of data coming through about how important that is for our own well-being. And you're absolutely right. I go for a walk, and you suddenly feel balanced. You hear a blackbird singing. You have a little interaction with something, and suddenly you feel so much better. Especially when you're sat in front of a computer all day. I'm sorry, we should probably be all outside, shouldn't we? But anyway, next time. Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much, guys. That was really, really good. So the last of our speakers is Keith. Hi, Keith. Who's going to be talking about ParkLife and what they've been doing over in the Totnes area. So over to you, Keith.
Okay, thanks very much, Mike. Right, can everybody hear me okay? Yep, thank you.
Yep.
Right, so as Mike has introduced, I'm Keith Reynolds. I'm a director of ParkLife Southwest. We're set up in 2018 to support community environmental volunteering. Our logo kind of picks up that we're about people and place, people and the environment. There's a tree with folks in, if you can make out what that is, but it's also in our name, ParkLife. So we're about people and place in equal measure. We've set ourselves up in response to what we feel is a real gap between perhaps local authorities and statutory bodies and people on the ground. I've worked for many years for local authorities and in the conservation sector, and I was always very frustrated by the fact that I couldn't support every community group that wanted to do something. So this, as I'll explain, I think the best way of explaining what we do is I'll take you through a few examples. In this slide, there's a group at Wembury Recreation Ground planting trees. And on the right hand side, this is our Green Hay project, where we're working in partnership with Devon Wildlife Trust. So it's our volunteers and the Trust's volunteers at Longmarsh in Totnes, where it's a donor site for green hay, which is then taken to the Avon Valley. So Andrea has very nicely explained what a community interest company is all about. And for us, we chose this structure because it suits our purpose. It enables us to stay focused when work comes along. If it ticks the community box, ticks the environment box, and ticks the education box, we're usually there. People have offered us other work and it hasn't met those goals, so it's really good for us. And also, I mean, we don't make a lot of profit by definition, but where we have, we've been able to channel that money into community projects where there's been a deficit for funding. So that's working well for us so far. We do cover Devon and Cornwall. We do have some projects in Cornwall, but obviously for the purposes of this presentation, I'll be talking about Devon. There are three of us who are founding directors, came together with a common interest. There's myself, Andrew, who's the guy with the cap on the left there, and one other person, Catherine. But we've got 7 project staff, including ourselves, and people working both full and part-time now, supporting community environmental projects. So I think that's grown quite quickly and surprisingly quickly, and kind of reflects the amount of projects that are coming through us. Obviously, we cover quite a wide geographical area, but we're based effectively in Ivybridge, where we've got our tool store and tree nursery. So that's me in the top right-hand corner. I'm collecting hay rattle, yellow rattle seed from a meadow we created only a couple of years ago at Totnes Cemetery, and we're taking it to and using it at other sites as well. So that's quite an interesting one. So as I say, I'll give you a couple of quick examples of how we work. So the first example is Chivelston Church, where a few weeks ago we were approached. So this is where the community come to us, and we want to encourage more of this. We were approached by the Parochial Church Council to set up a wildflower garden in their churchyard. So what we do is we offer beginning to end project management. So it goes right through the initial ideas, how do you form them into a plan, consultation with the community, helping with fundraising, getting consents from the landowners and any other consents that are needed for a project, the publicity and promotional side, and then the practical coordination, training and supervision on the ground, and then future maintenance. So Chivelston Church was an easy one because they own the land, so there were no consents needed there. It was a group from the church and it was a fairly straightforward one for us to go down there with our tools, with some seed, and help them actually create 2 patches of wildflower grassland, and give them some future management advice. And we were able to talk about churchyard management in general as well. So that's a nice sort of rounded thing. South Devon AONB provided the funding for that one. Sometimes we go to a group. This is Down Thomas community, which is a small village within the parish of Wembury on the outskirts of Plymouth, if you don't know it. ParkLife got some funding through Devon County Council and the Woodland Trust Emergency Tree Fund, and we were aware that there was this playing field which we thought could be enhanced with some more planting. So we planted 220 broadleaf whips with them. The local Women's Institute donated 6 fruit trees and provided refreshments, very important on the day. And we advertised it as a community event in half term, and we had 28 adults and 12 children came along. And the chap in the middle there with the cap is Brigadier Simon Young, and he's a deputy lieutenant. So all of these tree planting projects were advertised for the Queen's Green Canopy as well. You'll see there we also built a bug hotel as an activity for the children. But that's a really nice little project where we had some funds and we were able to take them to a group, and it was a really good day. Sometimes we're offered groups and we need to match them to sites, and this is the perfect example. This is Fulham Park in Ivybridge, owned by the Town Council. Again, we had the funding from the County Council Woodland Trust Emergency Tree Fund, but at the same time we also heard from the National Parks Youth Ranger that they had students and young people who were working as part of the Generation Green project for their John Muir Awards. And these young people planted 600 broadleaf whips in the morning. They were all guarded with cane support and mulched by 2 p.m. And that was in the rain, and that was a fantastic effort. So what a day, what a rewarding day that was. And the final example I've got is also in Ivybridge, where we've actually created a group, and we've created a group to work as a task force. So there are a lot of like-minded people in Ivybridge who are keen to get stuck in. So since 2018, we've been developing this group. They've been involved at 20 different parks and green spaces within the town. There's more than 40 people in the group who come out at various times, and they've done things like tree and hedge planting, woodland management, pond conservation, wildflower meadow creation, and we offer them a weekly project to keep the momentum going. So this is at Woodlands Park, that top image, which is on the west side of Ivybridge, and the pond is there as well. So a very interesting one. So this builds on what our previous speakers have said. Why do people volunteer? Well, I've had a long involvement over many years working with conservation volunteers, and I do know that people come out for various reasons, and some of these have been touched on. Obviously, to get fresh air and exercise in the great outdoors, the green gym, a response to the pandemic actually, and the lockdowns. We've seen an increase in people coming out. You get a sense of well-being. Obviously, you meet like-minded people. People don't agree on everything, but by and large, of course, you know, you're there for the environment. It's a social activity. People are developing friendships. They come back on the basis of that. And they're helping the local landscape. There's a good sense of civic pride. And people do want to do something for wildlife. And of course, people are aware there's a biodiversity emergency. And that's one of the biggest drivers, I think, for people coming and joining our projects. And also to make a contribution in helping to offset the effects of climate change, as we've already said. And then people like to gain new skills and knowledge as part of it. In these images, this is a group at Wembury Recreation Ground creating a wildflower meadow strip within the recreation ground. And this is at the bottom, Victoria Park in Ivybridge, where we did some tree planting, and there's 4 of our regular Ivybridge volunteers. Who are our partners in Devon? Well, these are the organisations we've worked with so far, and they range from county, district, borough, town, parish councils to small community wildlife focused groups and everything in between. Schools, colleges, WIs, allotment associations. Basically, we'll work with anybody who's interested in doing this kind of stuff, and we offer the same level of support. And as I say, bridging that gap between the voluntary sector and statutory organisations as well. I've put so far there because it's been very much focused on South Devon so far, and we're keen to get into other areas as time goes on. So this is our offer. I won't go through all of these because I've already mentioned that the beginning to end project support. But consents and agreements, we know who to ask. I know that community groups, people do get bogged down sometimes and they get put off when they're planning their projects because they don't necessarily know who to go to. I think there's a number of us who've worked in local authorities who know their way around the system, which is quite useful, I think. Training and education, we try and offer training on site for projects. Tools, we've got tools, and a bit like Andrea, I think we're going to be offering, we've had a grant from South Hams Council to purchase tools to offer out to the community to use. So if ParkLife aren't there, there's tools, spades, forks, bow saws, whatever, which people can pick up from us. For our projects, we have public liability insurance, so anybody who's working with us is covered. We always try and offer refreshments. And at the bottom there, continuation. We won't just walk away. One of my biggest frustrations in my career has been the number of projects, the number of things that we've started, and then we've just not had the funding to continue. So I think it's very important that that we have some kind of legacy, some kind of succession project at the end, and not just walk away. So that's one of the things ParkLife will aim to do. So I think that's my final slide. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Keith. That was really, really good. Actually, we as a department at Devon County Council went out with Keith and co for our Christmas day out and had a lovely day planting around Fullerton House, didn't we? Just outside Totnes, which I can attest was a lot of fun, and it felt like we actually achieved something. We actually got them in the ground, although I did spend a bit of time pruning something back, which I felt a bit counterintuitive.
It was great to have the natural environment team. It was a little bit daunting with all that knowledge, all those ecologists coming out and putting us under pressure, but it was great. Thanks.
Oh, there's only 3 ecologists. The rest are all climate people and the like. So no, it was fine. No, it's good. Really, really good. Thanks so much, Keith. That was brilliant. If you want to get in contact with any of our speakers, then you can. I'm sure they wouldn't mind if you were to contact them. So I'd ask if they could put their email addresses and the like in the chat, and you can contact them at a later date. That would be really great. But does anyone have any questions for our speakers? You might like to ask. If you'd like to pop your hand up and we can take any questions. None at all. I think we did have one in the chat, actually. I think we had one from Tim. For ecotherapy, our clients referred via any available NHS social prescribing routes. I assume that's one for Simon.
Yeah, at the moment, it's very, very rare that anybody gets referred through the NHS. So the work that I do as an ecotherapist, all my client work are individual private clients. Although I get a sense that it's changing. The way that the NHS work, with lockdown and the sort of the increased focus on mental health, there was definitely a shift towards more referrals and referring people rather than just a broad brushstroke of, oh, go and do some CBT work. There are different elements that are available, but as with anything, I think it's quite a slow process. And ecotherapy, although it's growing, it is still kind of, at the moment, probably definitely less scientifically proven compared to CBT. So there's not so much funding for it available. But I think it will change. I do hear more people sort of saying, "Oh yeah, we've heard about it, and maybe my company will pay for this or what have you." So I think it will happen eventually.
Thanks. I was just really wondering whether it was because the GPs and other NHS weren't aware of your existence, or were reluctant to refer, whether it was a blockage at their end, or whether it was just just not getting through.
Yeah, with GPs in particular, they tend to only refer to large services, so the own NHS, mine services, that sort of thing. They don't tend to refer to individuals. Although I had one client a couple of weeks ago who got in touch because their GP had said there is a counselling directory if you want to go private, and so they found me that way. So yeah, it's an ever growing, an ever changing way of working.
Brilliant, thanks, Simon. Any other questions?
I've just answered the question about the John Muir Awards. Somebody was asking what the John Muir Awards are.
Yes.
The John Muir is a well-known Scottish naturalist, and the John Muir Trust runs these awards, encouraging people of all backgrounds to connect with, enjoy and care for wild places. So it must be something that Dartmoor National Park were offering to young people. So that's what that was for.
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to mention I'm from Devon Community Foundation, where I'll be working on a project until the end of next year. But we have community grants that might be of interest. So shall I put a link in the chat because all of the projects that have spoken today might be interested.
Yeah, that sounds great, Kat. Yeah, do please drop them in. That sounds very similar to the Devon Community Together grants that I was going to talk about, actually.
No, this one's a small grant. It's only for £2,000, but.
Okay, there's just grants everywhere, isn't there? Yeah, we've launched one actually through Wild About Devon, which is the local nature partnership initiative. It's a collaborative thing, and I think Andrew and Simon mentioned it earlier, the Devon Environment Foundation, sorry, all these names are very similar, have part funded this as well. So that grant's available, I think up to £500 on that one. But again, I should probably put the link in the chat. So if anyone is looking for a bit of funding, that's still open as well. So, but all this information is available on the Devon Local Nature Partnership website as well. So if there's no more questions, I think we will leave it there. Thank you so much to all our speakers. That was really inspiring, very interesting, and just great to know that there's people who do care, who are doing lots of brilliant things out there for nature and wanting everyone to get involved in it as well. So thank you very much. The next edition of the Wild About Devon webinars, I believe, is in May. The events page has been updated on the Devon Local Nature Partnership website, and that will be about invasive species. So that will be an invasive species week. So if you're interested in crayfish and deer and why they're invasive and a problem and how we're dealing and tackling with them in Devon, then do tune in for that one. Should be good. But I think until then, I will stop the recording.